Good afternoon. Thanks for being here today. I'd like to thank all of you for taking some time out of your lunch hour to join us. Before I proceed, though, I want to introduce my family, starting with my wife, Heather, and my daughters, Lily, Reagan, Molly, Charlie, and Josie, who's not letting go of those cookies. These ladies are the core of my life, and they have made so many sacrifices for me to be able to serve the state of Kansas as Secretary of State. I love them each dearly. Each one of you has made me a better person, and I'm so glad they're here with me today to share this moment. Those of you who know my girls know that I am richly blessed. Being the father of 5 girls is wonderful, except when you need to use the bathroom. But, we had a little bit of a lineup this morning. They were all putting on their nicest clothes, but. Anyway, it's been such a blessing to have this family at my side, and campaigns can be long and grueling, but if you have girls like this, and those of you who know me well know I take my girls everywhere. The parades are a lot more fun, the events are a lot more fun, and we all have a good time. So let me just begin. Some of you know that I wasn't born in Kansas. I was born in Wisconsin, but my family moved to Kansas when I was 7 years old. Grew up in Topeka, went to college and law school out on the East Coast, and even went to graduate school for 4 years in England. And have had the opportunity to travel all over the world, both when I was in graduate school and then later as a missionary for my church in Africa, and also hunting in Canada and places like that. So I've been blessed to see a lot of the world and been blessed to see a lot of this country, as many of you have. And I can tell you one thing always was very clear to me, and that is I was coming home to Kansas. There's no other place on this planet I would rather live. And you know, it's funny, there's a caricature image of Kansas that a lot of people in America have. They refer to us as flyover country, or they joke about Toto and clicking our shoes together and going home and the Wizard of Oz and all that. But then when they come and visit us, those of us who live in Kansas, they come and visit us, people from out of state or maybe from one of the coasts, they all say, oh, I didn't know Kansas was this good. I didn't know Kansas was such a great place to live. And then if you press a little further and you ask why, they almost always say it's because of the people. The people of Kansas are so nice. The people of Kansas are what make Kansas, Kansas. And that's why, and we all know that, and that's why Kansas will always be my home. And Kansas will be the place I die if it wasn't the place where I was born. And that's why I built my career here. That's why I'm raising my family here. That's why I feel so blessed to have served the people of Kansas for the past 6.5 years as their Secretary of State. Kansans are tough, generous, resilient, and principled. If you think back, Kansans have been innovators in flight. We have been the breadbasket of the world. We have led the nation in so many ways, in technology, standouts in art and sports. We've had leaders in national and international politics. We have had warriors who have defended freedom all over the globe. But these things haven't been achieved easily. They've been done through hard work and perseverance. And it's interesting, the state motto for Kansas, ad astra per aspera, to the stars through difficulty, was shaped in the wake of the Civil War, and that's what it reflected. But it's interesting, that motto really reflects who we are today. And so 150 years later, we still, that motto really defines Kansas so well, even though at the time it was referring to the conflicts of the Civil War. I don't know about Show Me. That's not quite as great, but I'll try to lay off the jokes on the Missourians for a while. But Kansas has often taken the tougher road, has taken the road less traveled, has not been afraid to face an uphill climb, and that's why Kansas has achieved so much. But you can't look objectively at what's going on in Topeka today and say that the politicians in Topeka are living up to the role model set by the people of Kansas and living up to the same standards that Kansans hold themselves to. That principled idealism of early Kansas, standing up against the scourge of slavery, that's been replaced in Topeka by petty partisan bickering. The actions of people in Topeka have left us with it left me with a pit of doubt in my stomach as to can these guys and gals solve these problems? And they're not that difficult of problems to solve. Are they even trying to solve the problems? Kansas has so much more going for it than the bickering in Topeka would suggest. You know this, from agriculture to fossil fuels, from highly ranked schools to nationally recognized infrastructure, from the cement plants that dot southeast Kansas to the feedlots and the meatpacking plants in southwest Kansas. And by the way, our feedlots produce a quarter of the feeder cattle in our nation. So we have so much to offer. Our people deserve so much better than what's happening in Topeka right now. But instead of working to capitalize on these tremendous assets, I think that our leaders, our legislature in particular in Topeka, has squandered some of those assets. I think that they are taking steps that are counterproductive, and it seems like they're just playing games to set each other up for the next election. So instead of collaborating to find ways to balance the budget, they instead devise tax policies that end up penalizing all Kansans. In short, Topeka faces a crisis of leadership, and that brings me to why I'm here today. Today, I'm announcing my candidacy for governor. I know that if I make my little girls stand up here the whole time, suddenly there'll be distractions on TV, so we don't need that. We need some dramatic changes in Topeka. You know, instead of debating ways to put Kansas on the leading edge of the economic recovery that is occurring in the United States and that President Trump is leading and that new policies in Washington are pushing and accelerating, instead of getting ourselves on the leading edge of that wave, we have a legislature that on Tuesday passed the largest tax increase in state history. It's outrageous. I mean, this is the time where you do not want to be taking policies that are going to reduce growth. You want to be getting on the front edge of the wave, and you want to be increasing growth. This is absolutely the worst time for the worst tax increase in our state's history. We're going in the wrong direction. That tax hits working people, it hurts the working poor, it hurts middle class, it hurts everyone. And instead of passing policies to keep Kansas on the leading edge of technology and to capitalize on all these assets we have, the areas where we're leading the country, it seems like the legislators just waste their time every year until they get to the end. And then at the end of the legislative session, they jam everything into a couple of weeks and they pass some of the worst legislation we've ever seen. And it happens again and again. And part of that is a lack of leadership. Indeed, a large part of that is a lack of leadership. The governor's office needs to lead, needs to say this is where we're going, and if we don't get there, you're going to stay in session until we get there, because we have goals and we have to reach those goals. So how do we get there? What are the problems that we're facing? I just want to talk about three things, three problems that illustrate how bad it is in Topeka: corruption, taxation, and illegal immigration. First, corruption. Part of the problem is that many of the people in Topeka have been there too long. How long, you ask? Well, let's just take one example. One of the leaders of the other party, Senator Anthony Hensley, you may not know this. This is amazing to me when I reviewed this history. He was first elected to the legislature when Gerald Ford was president, and I was 8 years old. Gerald Ford passed away nearly 11 years ago, and I am now 51 years old. Do the math. And he is still in office. I think it's time to retire. It is. So that's one problem. And then on the other hand, you have legislators who exchange their legislator pin, their legislator badge, for a lobbyist badge. And it's the revolving door. And so they're in Topeka getting rich off of the bad legislation that is being passed by their former colleagues, cashing in on the offices that Kansans entrusted them to serve with dignity. That's wrong. Public service should not be a career. Public service should be a calling. It should be a temporary public post that a citizen takes and then goes back to being a citizen. You know, the Founding Fathers, many people sometimes wonder, why didn't the Founding Fathers put term limits in the Constitution for members of Congress? Well, part of it was the culture back then. You didn't have career politicians. The average tenure of a member of Congress at the time of our nation's founding was 1.5 terms. 3 years was the average tenure for a member of Congress. Nobody imagined that people would make a lifetime out of this. So Kansas law currently limits our governor to 2 4-year terms. That's a good policy. I think it's worked well. It's ensured cycling of leadership and new blood. I believe it's time to extend term limits to all statewide officers and to all of the legislators. There are nearly 3 million people in our state, and by the way, at the time of our founding, the population of the United States was 3 million people. I think that there is enough talent in this state for the current leadership in Topeka to cycle out and for younger blood to come in and try to solve the problems that the existing leadership has failed to solve. So I also believe that paid lobbyists and former legislators who become lobbyists, that transaction is a little bit too easy and that the revolving door has to stop. We have to have a situation that limits how lobbyists, former legislators, can enrich themselves immediately after leaving the legislature. Now let me be clear, every person has a right to make money. Every person has a right to earn a living, and every person has a right to petition their government for redress of grievances and to petition their legislators and make their case. But there are some limits, and those limits ensure that we don't have corruption in Topeka. We need to balance the weight that lobbyists carry against the weight that our citizens should carry in the halls of the Capitol building in Topeka. That's number one. Number two, taxation. We'll talk a little bit about this. I've even got a chart to help me talk about it. So as you know, on Tuesday, the Kansas Legislature passed a $1.2 billion tax increase. That's $1.2 billion over the next 2 years, the largest tax increase in Kansas history. Now more than ever, we need a candidate for governor. We need a governor who will say no and who will stop the madness of ever increasing taxes in Topeka. The state does not need more money, and the people of Kansas do not need to keep feeding the government monster with year after year of increased taxes. And don't forget, this comes 2 years after we just raised our sales taxes to unprecedented levels. Kansas does not have a revenue problem. Kansas has a spending problem. You might not know this based on some of the reporting, but even before the tax hike that was just passed, Kansas this year will take in and spend a record amount of money. It's not like our government is starving. Our government continues to spend more and more, and we continue to take in more and more in taxes from Kansans. While there's certainly room for debate about what the appropriate level of taxation is and what the appropriate mix of property taxes, sales taxes, and income taxes are, and I will welcome that debate as governor in Kansas, there is no question that the state government is not short of money, and there is no question that these tax increases hurt Kansans and they have to stop. You know, if Kansas government would just handle its budget the same way you or I handle our family budgets, everything would be different. I mean, what do we do if you have a couple of months where the budget is tight and the credit card bill starts to go up and you say, you know what, we can't sustain this. We can't make ends meet. We can't balance our family budget. You cut spending, right? I'm sure you've all done that. We've done that with our family when we have a couple of months where we need to, hey, the credit card, we're spending too much here. We sit down and we say, okay, we can cut this, we can cut that, we can cut this. That's not what happens in Topeka. Instead, they go to you, the people of Kansas, and say, give me more. I'm taking it. And they don't ask because they don't have to ask. With the power of taxation, they take it. They steal it. They take it from your pocketbook and say, that's how we're going to balance the budget. Well, it's time legislators started acting like regular Kansans and balancing the state budget the way we balance our budgets, by tightening our belt and cutting spending. And, you know, there's a lot of spin going on as legislators are scrambling to explain why they just passed this tax increase, and unfortunately, Republicans are participated in that tax increase as well, which I am ashamed of as a Republican. Look, increasing taxes it taxes everybody more. It increases the lower end rates and it increases the higher end rates. And you just think about it. To increase taxes at this time on the working poor, that's wrong. To increase taxes on middle class families who are trying to make ends meet, that's wrong. To increase taxes on the wealthier Kansans who own businesses and are employing the other Kansans when we want them to employ more Kansans. That is wrong. To do it 2 years after that massive sales tax increase, that is wrong. To say that a person making over $60,000 a year is now in the highest tax bracket, that is ridiculous. That's not wrong, that's just stupid. To do all of this on the backs of hardworking Kansans when the legislature could have just spent less is wrong. And that's going to change. That's not leadership. When I am governor, I will fight against every attempt to raise taxes on the people of Kansas. But as you probably read, if you've read some of the articles and legislators trying to explain themselves, they said we had to do it. They say we had to raise taxes. We didn't have a choice. There was no way to balance the budget. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not the case. And I'm going to tell you something else. I've proven that that is not the case. And the reason I've proven it is illustrated in this chart. So when I came into office as Secretary of State in January of 2011, I made the decision, I made the commitment with the help of people on my staff who said, we can do this, boss. I said we are going to either flatline our budget and not spend a penny more than we are spending in fiscal year 11, which had already started, or we are going to cut our budget and spend less year after year after year. And with the help of great leadership in our office and in making some tough decisions, as you can see, the Secretary of State's office spent $7 million when I came in, and in 2016, fiscal year 2016, we were at $4.7 million. That's over 30%. If you listen to some of my critics, they'll say, oh, he must have slashed and burned, he must have fired people en masse, he must have done horrible things, he must have cut services. No, we didn't have a massive firing of people. We relied on a simple demographic fact. The baby boomer generation is retiring. We have an historic opportunity now, not just in Kansas, but in the federal government, at all levels of government, to shrink government because there's natural attrition occurring. And what I told my leadership in my agency is, every time somebody retires, we're going to try not to fill that position. How difficult is that? You have an opening created, see if you can combine two other jobs into one person's job and not fill that position. And so that's what we did. We reduced the total size of my agency's employees by 18% over 6 years. I'd say that's pretty good. Thank you. And we didn't cut services either. In fact, the Secretary of State's office is doing more than it did when I took office. As you probably read in the papers and seen on TV, we're prosecuting voter fraud. That's a whole new responsibility. Yeah, so much for the argument that voter fraud doesn't exist. I mean, we now have 9 convictions and counting, including many people who voted twice and many people who voted while being non-citizens. And we also chose practicality over luxury. There is a tendency when you're spending other people's money to choose the more luxurious option, the more expensive option, but that is usually not necessary. Government can live on smaller means than it is right now, and that is exactly what our office did. We've modernized our office procedures to save money. We're relying more on email and internet communications than on snail mail and the old-fashioned way of renewing your business registration. If I'm governor, I'm going to take the same approach to state governments. Now, so we see this chart. My spending went, as I said, from $7 million to $4.7 million over a 6-year period. What happened to total state spending in the government? The state government as a whole, all funds, went from $14.7 billion to $15.5 billion over the same period. Just look at that. That is an extraordinary and inexcusable increase. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, wait a minute, Kris, wait. They have an excuse. The legislators have an excuse because the Supreme Court of Kansas forced them to spend more money on education. Well, the Supreme Court of Kansas did force them to spend some more money on education, but K through 12 increases only account for about $300 million of that $800 million increase. So they can't use that excuse and say we had to spend more on all of these areas of government spending. Kansas government is bloated. Here's another statistic that I just find baffling. If you take state and local government combined, Kansas has the 3rd highest number of government employees per capita in the country. Third in the country. We are not New York, we are not Illinois, we are not California, but we have the third highest number of state and local government employees per capita. That is inexcusable. And by the way, we're 32% above the national average in the number of government employees we have per capita. That has got to change. So let me conclude this section by simply saying I'm going to take the same approach to state government that I did to the Secretary of State's office. We're going to try to we're going to take advantage of the demographic fact that the baby boomers are retiring. We're going to see reduction by attrition, not massive layoffs, but we will try to get by with fewer employees. And something tells me that if 47 of the other states can do it, I think we could probably manage in Kansas too. Now that brings me to my third point, illegal immigration. As many of you know, I've spent much of my career fighting against illegal immigration. I worked at the Justice Department after 9/11. I think there was something about that in the video. I designed a system while I was there to track high-risk visitors entering the United States and residing in the United States. At the end of the first year, we had apprehended 11 suspected terrorists and hundreds of alien criminals through that system. I helped Arizona. I co-authored their SB 1070 law that went to the Supreme Court. And their E-Verify law that went to the Supreme Court and was sustained completely across the board. SB 1070 was sustained in part and struck down in part. I've also authored laws for Alabama, Missouri, and many other states because they've said, hey, this was working. We want this guy to help us. We want to stop illegal immigration in our state. I've defended many cities across the country that were trying to protect American workers against competition from illegal alien workers within their city jurisdiction and defended them in court. And I also represented the 10 ICE agents who sued the Obama administration because President Obama, through executive decree, illegally declared an amnesty. And I personally advise, thank you. And I've also had the honor of personally advising President Trump, both before the election and after the election, on how to reduce illegal immigration. And is he doing a good job? I think he is. Strong borders and respect for the rule of law are essential to our country and to our state. They protect us against terrorism. They protect us against crime. They protect our workers against unfair competition and against wage depression. It's not just that the illegal alien takes your job. It's that the illegal aliens in that industry depress wages so that everybody who's still working in that industry is working for less. So it's about protecting Americans, putting Americans first. And I think that the failure of the Obama administration to put Americans first resulted in the reaction of people, and we have to, in the country who elected President Trump, and we have to realize that there are things we need to do in Kansas to put Americans first, to put Kansans first. And I'll tell you this, as someone who's worked on the issue of illegal immigration, you can't take a problem as large as massive law-breaking on the scale of illegal immigration in the United States and think that just the federal government can do it. You have to have coordinated action at the federal level and at the state and local level. Now, unfortunately, we have had none of that in Kansas. We've had no efforts to stop illegal immigration. In fact, Kansas is the sanctuary state of the Midwest. We are the only state in the 5-state area that has done nothing to discourage illegal immigration. You look at the laws of Oklahoma, Missouri, Nebraska, and Colorado. On the issue of immigration, they are far superior to the laws of Kansas. We are also the only state in the 5-state area that rewards illegal immigration by giving in-state tuition to illegal aliens when our own students are barely able to afford college. I don't know what I'm going to do when these 5 get old enough to go to college. I mean, think about it. The price of college is going up and up and up. The Board of Regents and the universities tell us, oh, they have to keep on increasing tuition and they have to take more and more from the taxpayer through legislative spending, but they give away hundreds of millions of dollars in effective subsidies to illegal aliens who only have to pay 1/3 the price. It's unfair, it's unreasonable, and it will stop when I'm going. So, as I've said, illegal immigration in our state hurts our safety, it hurts our workers, and it hurts our taxpayers. But I just want you to guess, how much money do you think the state is spending net each year on illegal immigration? When I say net, I mean if you take into account the taxes that illegal aliens in Kansas pay. How much are we spending? The answer is $424 million a year. We spend $442 million in all forms of welfare and programs, and we gain $18 million in taxes for a net sum of $424 million a year. Now, let's think about the deficit numbers. Remember those legislators that were telling us, oh, what was the budget number? It was below $400 million, the deficit they were trying to solve. So they raised taxes on hardworking Kansans effectively so they could keep those $424 million a year being spent on illegal aliens. Why don't they tackle the problem of illegal immigration in the state of Kansas and see if we can save some money there before we raise the taxes? Here's another statistic that blows my mind. 71% of illegal alien-headed households take advantage of some form of welfare. 71%. That's astounding. As Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, once said, he said, it's just obvious. You can't have open immigration and a welfare state. You can't have open immigration and a welfare state because the open immigration will swamp the welfare state and will no longer be able to provide for its own citizens. And the welfare state will draw in more illegal aliens because they want to take advantage of this most generous welfare state in the Western Hemisphere, arguably. That's going to change if I'm governor. There's a lot that a state can do to reduce illegal immigration, to reduce these burdens. Number one, sanctuary cities and counties in Kansas will end. Yeah. We currently have 5 sanctuary counties in Kansas. We did have 6. Johnson County recently, under the leadership of its new sheriff, changed and is no longer a sanctuary county. But the other ones have. Second, we will stop spending millions of dollars on public benefits and welfare for people in this state illegally. Third, we will stop giving illegal aliens in-state tuition at our universities. Fourth, we will introduce e-verify requirements to protect Kansas workers against unfair competition. And fifth, we will ensure that state and local law enforcement in Kansas cooperates with ICE when ICE makes a request to give them an illegal alien prisoner. But it's going to take political will because the legislature isn't doing that on its own. It's going to take a governor who's going to tell the legislature, this bill needs to be on my desk. And if this bill isn't on my desk by the end of the legislative session, then you're going to keep on doing your work until you get it on my desk. That's the kind of leadership we need in the governor's office. And I also want to replace the petty infighting that's going on in Topeka with principled idealism. Idealism that treats every person, born and unborn, able-bodied and disabled, young and old, rich and poor, equally. Regardless of race, regardless of class, regardless of any specifics of their situation, we treat everyone equally and as a value creation of the Almighty God, who accordingly deserves to be treated with respect. If you want to sum it up, I'm running to put the interests of Kansans first. And by Kansans, I mean Kansas taxpayers. Their interests have not been respected, and especially were disrespected this past week with this outrageous tax increase. We are Kansans. We know we can do this. We know we can turn this ship around. We know that we can achieve the dreams we want to achieve through aspiration, ad aspera, through difficulty, through hard work. We can get where we need to go. And Kansas as a state can get where Kansas needs to go. It's time for Kansas to lead again, and it's time to do the job that needs to be done. Thank you. May God bless America and God bless Kansas. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Exactly. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Hey, congrats, man. Thanks, man. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I guess we may do some hunting later this year. Absolutely. We're going to be talking. Joseph being a little bit shy. She's having a good time. She's finally started to come out of herself a little bit. Thanks for coming in.
Hi there. How are you? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here. How are you doing?
How many takes did it take before you got not too many. I just put over for a while. It's like after exercise, it's weird. It's the top one. So it's like a long time behind it. Congratulations, man. You got the right guy. No, you made a great speech. Well, yeah, phenomenal. My guys didn't let you down. Yeah. Hey. Yeah, don't worry about that. All right. Great video where Josh. Kris. Oh, hey. You should be there, Dennis. We're going to make some progress on the immigration. We'll be needing your insight in the committee. Awesome. Thanks for being here. Kris. Hey, congratulations. We'll get them. I'm excited to work for you. That'll be awesome. Thanks for being here.
They are Kansas. They were born in Kansas. We're so welcome. Thank you. Good, awesome. How's it going? We're so happy.
How are you, Kris? Well, that's great. We're starting, we will be starting in a month. We're about a month. We should be in by August 1st. We decided to build a new house. Yeah.
But it's great. Listen, good luck.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you need, I'll help you out.
Come on by. We'll be setting up a campaign office here in Johnson Park.
Okay, great.
There's the Johnson County Public Department has got office space that they lease. So we'll be facing that off. And they're opening a new office facility tomorrow. So we'll have space in that office.
The more important question is where will you have
But we'll hopefully get man. Hey there. How's it going? Good. Good job.
Okay. You gotta get over it. There you go. That'll work.
Yeah, so we know they're actually already.
Yeah. Doctor, the medical student. Yeah, he's thinking about it.
You think yesterday? I rode with him in the King area and down to Wichita.
No, I think it's good. Thank you. She's getting a little heavy. Yeah, we can do questions. What do you want to do that? Okay.
Go step out, step out.
Let me just get a glass of water.
No worries.
Mr. Secretary, a couple questions. Yeah, sure. Hold on. So what's the plan? We're gonna do how many questions?
Yeah, 5 questions.
Okay, we're getting 5.
5.
Let's give them 6. I mean, anyway, she wanted to make sure we don't stay here all day. But
Questions. You're
okay.
talking about draining the swamp, the culture of corruption.
Yeah, yeah.
You're in your second term. I look around this room. I see lawmakers, former lawmakers, lobbyists, some who are former lawmakers who became lobbyists. How do you
Yeah.
square that? You've been in Topeka a long time, and some of these people out here are exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I've been in Topeka for 6.5 years, and usually if you run for governor, you have to be proven in some office first. So I'm not saying that you can't serve in some office and then move on to a higher office. But sitting in one place for decade after decade after decade, as some legislators do, I think that's got to stop. And as far as the revolving door of people being in office and then becoming lobbyists and getting rich, there are some limits you can put on that. One of them is to put a time limit, and this has been talked about in Congress, so that you can't go from serving as a legislator and then the next day you're a lobbyist, getting paid big money to persuade the people that you were sitting next to. So you put a time limit on it, either a 1 year or a 2 year
So
or a 3
Travis
year.
Lovelady, who's here today, is a person who didn't.
Well, Travis would be, no, but you would limit it on the state. So Travis has done great work for the NRA, but you would say, okay, if you served in the Kansas Legislature, you can go, the NRA lobbies every state. Have Travis go lobby in Missouri or some other state. You could allow things like that. But the point is, you don't want to have legislators profiting from the relationships they have with the other legislators. So absolutely, you can be a lobbyist, but just you can't be in a position to profit from those relationships right away.
And where are
Chris, you
getting
talk
this
about
statistic
Kansas
from
being the
about
sanctuary state.
Here, let me look.
You talk about Kansas being the sanctuary
What's your
state,
source?
but
Federation for American
you're
Immigration.
the Secretary of State. You've been in office here. You've done legislation in other states. Why not do it here? I mean, don't
Yeah.
you share some responsibility for
Yeah, that's it.
that Kansas
Well,
problem?
No, I don't share responsibility for Kansas being the sanctuary state. As many of the reporters here know, every year since roughly 2005, maybe 2006, I have authored legislation and asked legislators to pass legislation to cut public benefits going to illegal aliens, to stop the in-state tuition policy. In fact, I sued on behalf of approximately 24 out-of-state students to try to stop the Kansas in-state tuition for illegal aliens. And our lawsuit went all the way to the 10th Circuit, and the judges there decided that our students didn't have standing because they weren't injured enough by the fact that they were paying 3 times as much in tuition. Now, I disagree with that decision, but I've been fighting against in-state tuition for illegal aliens, and I've also introduced bills to have E-Verify in Kansas. E-Verify is working very well in Arizona, Mississippi, South Carolina, Georgia. Other states that are doing really well economically are protecting American workers through E-Verify. Obviously, in Kansas, we can do the same thing. So in response to your question, I've been introducing bills year after year after year. I've been in front of the legislature testifying on those bills. I think it's probably fair to say that I've been testifying more than any other statewide elected officer in Kansas. They're probably getting tired of seeing me in the legislature. But the point is, they aren't passing those bills. And so I think you need a governor who will lead and will say, look, you get this bill on my desk, or else you may be spending more time in Topeka this summer. And I have to say that Governor Blunt did that in Missouri. Those of you who cover the Missouri side of the state line know he did this in 2008. He said, get that bill on my desk, or the legislature will remain in Jeff City. And the legislature responded. That's the kind of leadership we need to actually get the job done.
Hey, Kris, we're talking about cutting the budget. Can you be more specific? Because voters care about their safety, their family, and their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, can I be more specific about cutting the budget? So the first thing is that you can reduce the number of employees like we have in the Secretary of State's office. So as baby boomers retire in Kansas government, in every agency, whether you're talking about the Department of Commerce, whether you're talking about Parks and Wildlife, as they retire, you don't replace them. You say, okay, this one person can do that other person's job who just left. We did it in the Secretary of State's office. I guarantee we can do it throughout government. The one area where that might be difficult is in public safety, because you know there are standards. You have to have a certain number of highway patrolmen per capita. You have to have a certain number of police officers per population in a city. That's the one area where you can't shrink the number of employees. But in every other area, you can shrink the number of state employees. So that would be the number one thing. The second thing is you give incentives to public sector workers to save money. Now, what I mean by this is bonuses. You give small bonuses to state employees if they can save a large amount of money in their agencies. You give them private sector type incentives. People in the private sector get bonuses all the time for selling more, for doing something better, for coming up with a new product. Why can't we give incentives in the public sector to save money? So those are the two. Those are the two biggest ways that I would try to save money in state government, and we will do it. When I became Secretary of State, I'd heard the same thing that we hear all the time in the media and among public figures. Oh, they say, well, government never shrinks. It always grows. I've proven that government can shrink, and those are the two best ways to do it. Okay, another question. Two more. John, yeah.
Other than a mention of abortion, you didn't talk about social issues. Have you thought about Texas as having a special session to deal with what's known as the bathroom bill or student privacy? Have you thought about that issue at all and what you would do?
Yeah, so I do believe that students deserve privacy in the bathrooms, and that the transgender issue, although all people are deserving of respect and dignity, that shouldn't in any way endanger our kids using the bathroom at school. And so there was a bill, as you may know, that I believe did not get passed, that would have put protections in place for Kansans. So yeah, absolutely, we need to do those things too. And I didn't talk about the social issues because I don't think there's anybody in Kansas who doesn't know that I'm pro-life and pro-gun, so it seemed like it would be redundant for me to talk about it now. I wanted to talk about things that you might not have heard about.
But the bill that I think Representative Jacobs had on that subject of restrooms and student privacy, that would be something you could sign.
Is that the Texas bill you're talking about?
Yeah, it's similar to that.
I haven't read it yet. I mean, I've only heard news reports about it, so I'd have to read it before I say definitely I would sign it.
Back on immigration for a second. No, back on this is serious.
Okay, that was number 6. Okay, you get the last one. Okay.
So, one of the bills that you had, the Highway Patrol, to have them help serve as ICE deputies, the Highway Patrol said that would inhibit them from doing some of their other statutory duties. Don't some of these things, this crackdown on illegal immigration, wouldn't this end up costing more money in the short term?
No. So the testimony that you're referring to with regard to the Highway Patrol is they didn't understand what the bill would do. It doesn't force. We'll put it this way. Missouri already does it, for one thing. So Missouri has already deputized many of their Highway Patrol officers to assist when they have time in ICE. It doesn't transform Highway Patrol officers into ICE deputies full time. What it says is, if the Highway Patrol officer is not busy, has got a dead hour in his schedule, or comes across a van load of illegal aliens being trafficked through Kansas, and human trafficking is a big problem. Many of these people are being abused in the human trafficking industry. If he comes across that, he can actually put on his ICE deputy hat, and that's what Missouri officers can do. And so you don't do it all day long, you just do it when there is a need. You say, all right, I this particular specially trained officer, have the power to do immigration investigations. I have the power to tap into the DHS database to find out the immigration status of all these people, and I have the power to take custody of them for ICE. And so that's what it's on an as-needed basis. And so some of the people who criticized that bill, they honestly didn't understand how it works.
You think you can realistically fix the budget by cracking down on illegal immigration?
I believe that you can save much of the $424 million that we are spending on illegal aliens in the Kansas budget. It's state and local combined, but that we are spending in Kansas. You can save a lot of that money by stopping giving public benefits to illegal aliens and stopping giving in-state tuition to illegal aliens. Thanks.
We need to get some supporters.
Okay.
Sheldon.